What's up, everybody? It's me, Joey P. Joe Pisapia, and welcome to Fantasy Pros, the home of fantasy sports. It is me, it is Dan Harris, and it's you. And today, it is Bold Prediction Day. That's right. We are going to put our you-know-whats on the line for you-know-who. You. We're putting it out there all for you, and we're going to give you some of the boldest fantasy predictions that we could possibly think of. Some good, some bad, some ugly. We're also going to do some awards as well and recap some of the end of spring notes. And unfortunately, like every baseball season, it seems like we have some guys that are kind of limping to the finish line of spring training, but there's also some good news as well, as some guys are coming away with some jobs that maybe we didn't see coming, and that is always important. And Dan Harris, I am excited because this is just another day closer to you and I starting the marathon of leading off, where Dan Harris and Joey P are going to come at you every single day, Monday through Friday, talking baseball, talking season long, talking DFS, getting you ready for your day in MLB. And I'm excited about it, man. Look how many subscribers we have to the channel already on YouTube for Fantasy Pros MLB. I want to thank everybody because Dan Harris, it's starting to feel like a thing right here at Fantasy Pros. I think we've made baseball officially a thing.
Yeah, it's awesome. We had the idea at Fantasy Pros that we want to, have a separate YouTube channel just for the baseball guys, because baseball is kind of its own animal. And we joke about it a lot, Joe. I started kind of, it's just like a lark. Like, let's just see what this does and everything like that. And we have now, we just started. We've got 2.6 thousand subscribers, I think. We're videoing every podcast. And like you said, and let's just clarify that, because as everybody knows, or if you've been listening to it for a while, leading off was something that we started where I would record a podcast at like 2 a.m. in the morning for 15 minutes, recapping that day and giving everything. And it was just me solo, and it was great. And it's fine. You can get by on 3 hours of sleep for like 3 months, but after that, you kind of run out of gas. So we're going to be doing a new version of Leading Off, as Joey said. First thing in the morning, Joe and I are going to record it. We are going to stream it live to our YouTube channel.
Live.
So that is it. If you cannot wait the 30 to 40 minutes or however long it takes to actually get it out in the podcast, it's going to be streamed live on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/FantasyPros MLB. And I am pumped. I'm ready to go. I can't wait for the start of the season.
So if you want to be aware of when the live show starts and you want to be in on that, you got to subscribe. So go to YouTube, Fantasy Pros MLB, subscribe, click the notifications button. You click this, you click that, there it is. It's all done. It's all easy. And we're going to be there. And then you get the little notification. Oh, look, there's Joe and Dan talking about baseball live. I don't have to wait for the podcast to come out a little bit while longer, but the podcast form will be there too. Yes. I don't know who would want to miss out on watching us live. We are two very attractive men talking about sports. I don't know why anyone would want to not be there. So get in there, leading off, start your day off the right way. Also, before we jump into today's podcast, I want to remind everybody we just got a couple hours left. At the end of March, so goes away the Juan Soto jersey to somebody, some lucky devil out there. Thanks to our friends at pristineauction.com. Go to youtube.com/fantasypros. I'm sorry, wrong thing. Here we go. Go to FantasyPros. There you go. I got this. .com. /MLB contest. Thank you very much. See, it's a long day. I told Dan the allergy medication is rotting my brain today. So I'm gonna reboot again for everybody. Fantasy
It's a perfect
Pros,
day because it's bold predictions. Nobody can get mad about it, right?
I predict I will make it to the end of the show. What that looks
bold.
Like,
it's bold.
Nobody knows. FantasyPros.com/MLB contest. All you got to do to get involved is take a screenshot of your glowing 5-star review of the shows, and then you go back over. Again, you could do this at Apple Podcasts or CastBox. You go back over to FantasyPros.com/MLB contest. You upload your review screenshot. You fill out this little form. Bada boom, bada bing, as they say in my neighborhood growing up. You're entered to win a Juan Soto autographed jersey. That is... I can't think of a better way to start off the new baseball season with a nice Juan Soto jersey hanging up somewhere in your house or on your person. So again, go get involved in that. And again, thank you to our friends at pristineauction.com. Let's do a little housekeeping here because, this is kind of the end of spring training, the beginning of the season here in a few days. Let's talk about some of the new pitchers kind of coming up here. Dustin May gets the last spot in the Dodger rotation. I'm sure at some point he will get Dodgered. He's more of a two-pitch pitcher at this point in his career. Talked about David Price actually just yesterday being a player I'm kind of soured about. And it feels like, here we go, Dustin May getting an opportunity, not Gonsolin, not Price. What are your thoughts here on Dustin May? Are you surprised about this?
I am surprised, but I'm also trying not to overreact to it because we knew that whoever won the fifth starter's role was not going to be in the rotation the entire season, right? This is what the Dodgers do. They Dodgers themselves right into the World Series, and that's what they're probably going to do again. And by doing that, it's because they limit innings. So I expect Price to make 15 starts probably this year. I expect Gonsolin to do the same, and I expect May to pretty much do the same. The guy threw 56 innings last year. He's not suddenly going to throw 180 this year. Not that his strikeout rate was pretty low last year. I mean, it was better in the minors. So I did move him up my board if you're still drafting now, but only a few spots, Joe, because I did expect him to get a bunch of starts this year anyway. I think he's just going to get them more at the beginning of the season.
All right. Jose Leclerc is going to have Tommy John surgery, so that's obviously not a surprise. We all kind of saw that coming. So Matt Bush or Ian Kennedy, or are you just running away?
Running away. I mean, like this.
I'm running to Ian Kennedy.
Are you?
Tell you? I am because I'm so desperate for saves because I hated closer this year so much that I just punted everywhere. So I'm just gonna run and chase it. I'm gonna chase it all year long, and hopefully I'll hit somebody and I'll get 25 saves out of them. But
what's really annoying about this one is that this was actually one of the situations where you felt like you had a guy in waiting that you thought would take over if something happened to the main guy, and that guy in waiting was Jonathan Hernandez, who then hurt his UCL and is going to be out for a while. Do you think it's going to be Kennedy as the guy, Joe, that's just going to get the save chances right now?
I think default he gets the first real opportunity to run with it because I always feel like managers just lean on veterans in the ninth inning, typically. And, it's no knock on Matt Bush, and it might very well be this wackadoo committee scenario, and that's fine. It's fine, but it's worth a shot for a couple bucks to kind of figure it out. Speaking of the Rangers, too, this was kind of maybe it wasn't surprising. Maybe it shouldn't have been surprising, but Rougned Odor DFA'd.
Yeah.
So how about that? So that's good news for Josh Young, who could potentially start to factor into their plans sooner than later. So I would bump him up a little bit higher in terms of what you think in 2021 might his impact be. But, enough already with Odor, right? I mean, this guy can barely hit 200. I know he can hit 20 home runs, but at the end of the day, he just doesn't make enough contact.
Yeah, a couple of guys in, a long-time fantasy league, they knew that I was always the Odor guy because I was always like, well, I mean, look, he's got the 30-homer power. He plays second base. He throws in some steals. He's going to be fine. But, yeah, it's not like you were drafting him this year anyway. He'll get picked up somewhere because he does have power. But, yeah, at some point, we can't make Odor a thing anymore. It's just not. It was never going to happen. So not a huge thing with fantasy ramifications because I doubt many people were relying on him outside of AL-only leagues. But yeah, I think the ride is pretty much over for Rougned Odor.
I can hear the phone ringing right now. It's Dana White. Come on, Rougned Odor, get in the UFC. Let's go. Hey, you can throw a punch.
By the way, this is what's fun. I do want to point out that I supervise our news desk. Okay, so for both NFL and MLB, and it's terrifying right now when I get the notifications because you can set up notifications if you have your team into my playbook for all your players. It is terrifying for me right now because I'm just like, just avoid injury. And they're not really even playing anymore, so it's fine. But still, I'm waiting for it. So every time I get a notification of my player, I'm just like, okay, please. And I'm like, okay, fine. He just had a good, he hit 2 home runs yesterday or something like that. So this is a terrifying part of the fantasy baseball prep season. I'm just going to lay that out there.
No news is good news. I agree.
Correct.
George Springer also looks like his opening day is probably up in the air. And I said this a while back. If you're a George Springer person who's got him on a roster. Yep. I'm telling you right now, you want this. You want him to miss the opening.
Yes.
Don't rush back, make it worse. That's the worst possible scenario. I mean, we've seen these oblique things just get so difficult over time. It's just, no. Also, it looks like it might be a little bit of give in the Eloy Jimenez timetable. Instead of 5 to 6 months, could be 4 to 5. I have him in my rankings right outside the 100, right around there. Does that seem about right for you?
Yeah, I think
for outfielders, I should say more specifically.
Yes, for outfielders.
Yes, I not overall. Not overall. So.
I think I have him at 122. Look, people asked Joe, and people asked us on Twitter today, actually, what would you do with the pitchers who are coming back from TJ, right? Whether it's Severino or Sale or Noah Syndergaard, guys who are going to be out for a few months. Do you draft them and put them on your IL? And this guy in particular who asked us has 2 IL slots. So my answer was you can draft them if you want. It's just going to be really hard to be able to hold them for that long because guys are going to be on the IL all season long, especially this year. And with that, Eloy, that's an extra probably month or two that you'd have to hold him. So I think it's really difficult to hold on to him for the whole year if you're still drafting right now. But try it. I mean, there's no downside to it. And in keeper leagues, I'm fine. But yeah, just a terrible break for that guy who, again, top 10 outfielder for me before the injury.
Yes, me as well. And once again, my labor team is doomed before it even gets off the ground. I had Trout the year he got hurt for that extended period of time, too. It's just like everything I touch in labor is just, and it feels so good in February. And this is why I feel like we should draft labor in February for the good of everybody else, and then redraft it again right before the season. Like, here's the draft to help set ADP and do what it's supposed to do. But let's not play that one out because it's ridiculous, because it's 2 months ahead of time.
Sure.
Let's move it to like the week before, and you know, it's better. But again, I'm complaining. Last but not least, Francisco Lindor, rumors of a $325 million offer. That would go a long way. I'm good with that offer. I think that's fair. I don't think he's worth $400 million, as good as Lindor is. I do not think he is Mike Trout. I do not think he is Juan Soto. I don't think he's in that tier. Do you think that the Mets and Lindor get this done?
No, not before the season starts. It does sound like, I mean, that whatever he was asking for, 12 for 385. I think it sounded like a lesser AAV, but more years. I mean, they both say they're done, so I'll go with the fact that they're done, but then they re-sign him at the end of the year once he realizes how great it is to play in New York for a wonderful team like the Mets after a World Series victory. So
if I'm Francisco Lindor, I sign that contract, and I'll tell you why. You're going to get some major labor implications in 2022, my friends. The CBA is up. If you're Lindor, you sign that deal and you lock in whatever it is, because you don't know what the landscape's going to be when the CBA is done, or how long it's going to take to get done. So I don't know. I think he is. I think he's pushing the envelope, and I don't think there's a team out there that's going to give Francisco Lindor $400 million. I don't. Yeah. 325. I know it's a crazy thing. 325 sounds fair. It's a fair number. $300 million. Okay, so enough of that. Let us begin with some of our bold predictions. We've each got 5. I assume we're going in bold order or something close to it.
I'm going in reverse bold, maybe. I don't know. Bold? I've got 5 all over the place.
I've put your 5 in there.
Oh, okay. You tell me whatever order you want to talk.
I'll tell you what. Let's. Is your number one overall fantasy pitcher your most bold or your least bold? That's the best way I can do it.
I thought least bold. I don't know, actually.
That's why I have it too.
Great. Whatever you want. Whatever.
This is going to be leading off, by the way. It's going to be 2 guys going like this. And that's the show.
No.
It's a show about nothing and baseball. So Blake Snell is the number 1 fantasy pitcher. That is your bold prediction. So back it up. Where are you coming from this?
So the reason I think it's bold, of course, but I don't think it's crazy bold, since we've seen Snell be a totally dominant pitcher before, and he's 14th in our expert consensus rankings and in consensus ADP. So you predict that the 14th ranked pitcher is going to finish as the number 1 ranked pitcher. I'm not like, oh my God, this is the craziest thing I ever heard. It's pretty simple, right? It's not the talent. We know what Snell's talent is. We saw the dominance in 2018 with the 189 ERA and the 097 WHIP, the 221 strikeouts, and that was in the AL East. How do you feel now that he's in the NL West against the Diamondbacks, who are not a good team, against the Giants, who have 5 regulars, who are lefties, by the way, in their lineup, and against the Rockies team that might win 60 games this entire year? So really, it's innings, right? I mean, and again, you're in the National League. You've got Jacob deGrom anyway. Like, he's going to dominate the whole league. You've got Garrett Cole. You've got Shane Bieber. It's going to be very difficult to finish as the number 1 pitcher. But again, he's never pitched more than 180 innings. Maybe they cap him. He only had 50 last year. But the Rays have babied him his entire career, and that hasn't really gotten them that far. Like, it's not like they are preventing the injuries. So maybe the Padres, who need to win every possible game they can to try to win the division from the Dodgers so they don't have to play in the wild card game, maybe they let him go a little bit. If he gets to 180, if he's dominant, I think he's got a chance he's going to win games again on the Padres. So I think there's a chance, certainly, that he finishes as a top 5 pitcher. And once you get there, I think if he's got the innings, he's got an actual chance. Again, this is possible, not plausible necessarily.
This is fun. Possible. It's bold.
But I want to say Blake Snell, number 1 fantasy pitcher overall.
I'm going to make an unofficial bold prediction off of your prediction. This is not one of my official 5.
Okay.
But my prediction is that Blake Snell is not the best pitcher on the Padres, nor is he the second best pitcher on the Padres. I think Chris Paddock actually is going to finish with more fantasy points than Blake Snell. How you doing? You like that? You like that bold prediction?
I don't hate that. I really think that the Padres right now, you could have said, this is what's funny. Obviously Darvish. You could have said Paddock, but I was almost like, oh, you thinking maybe Musgrove too? Because I really like Joe Musgrove, right?
Yeah,
Any one of them.
It's a good rotation. Let me tell you, the Padres, all the Padres have to do is just get to the playoffs with that pitching in a short series healthy. If they can go with those 4 starters, I think they can compete with anybody. I really do. And I think it'd be a really fun team to watch and some really fun potential playoff games. All right, I've got a pitcher for my number 5 spot too. Corbin Burnes. I love Corbin Burnes.
Me too.
He finishes as a top 10 starter. Right now he's outside the top 20. So this is not Super Bowl, but if you think about it, in order for him to get there, he's got to be transcendently good to get in this top 10 because the first 3 guys are going to be there anyway. So there's only 7 spots left because I'm looking at this as Cole, DeGrom, and Bieber are locks. Probably Yu Darvish is a lock too. So that's 4. So really, we're only down to 6 spots. So he's got to be better than all those other guys that are left. And I think Corbin Burnes can do this. And I think people are hesitant because he didn't log a ton of innings last year because it was a short season. But I got to tell you, man, I keep looking for holes and downsides when I look at Corbin Burnes stats, and they just ain't there. I mean, this guy could potentially be that good. So it's a little bold, but you know what? That's what we're doing here. It's not the lukewarm projections, which, by the way, that comes up tomorrow. We're going to do that show. The lukewarm takes.
Right.
As Nick Kroll says, the warm breezes instead of the hot takes. That's what it is.
So I like this. My biggest thing with him is the fact that the Brewers have already come out and said 100 innings. And who knows if they actually hold to that.
Liars.
But right now they have 100 innings. That's right. Show me those 100 innings when you're in a playoff race for the division with the Cardinals and you really need, and you're like, oh, I'm sorry, we're going to back you off. I mean, maybe they Steven Strasburg it from several years ago where the Nats were just like, oh, we're going to we're going to shut you down there, Strasburg. So maybe they do that. But if he's locked at 160 innings, I think it would be tough probably to get there, but the talent, I have zero concerns about him. I loved him in 2019, and I was horrible because I was throwing so much out there. I was like, oh, it's Burnes. He's going to be fine. Like, don't worry about it. Look at his FIP. Look at it. He's going to be great. And then he just wouldn't stop giving up home runs. But I like what he did with his pitch mix. Love him as a pitcher. So definitely a little bold, especially because of the innings. But I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility.
Take the cuffs off. Let him go. Let's go. Yep. Are we men? Are we men playing a game here? Yes. Go out there and go 150 innings. Let's do it. Come on, Brewers. Come on. You can make this happen. All right. Next here up for you is an outfielder for one of your bold predictions.
Yeah, this is pretty bold, I think. It's Byron Buxton finishes as a top 6 fantasy outfielder. Now, I said top 6 because I cannot in good conscience say he would finish ahead of Acuna or Betts or Soto or Trout, and I'm completely obsessed with Christian Yelich this year, so I went with top 6. Look, we know what Buxton can do when he is healthy. It's always about the health, but you know he's fast, 99th percentile in sprint speed last year. Even though he didn't steal any bases, you know that he can whenever he wants to. And last year he took a huge jump in barrel rate, 13.5%, hard hit rate, 47.9%. He had career high average exit velocity at 91.2 miles per hour, and he was top 7% in expected slugging percentage. So if he really is going to add this power, remember, Buxton has been in the majors for what feels like 45 years, and he's just 27, right? So he feels one of these guys who've been like, oh, Byron Buxton, guy, he's been around forever. He's just now entering what should be his prime. Now, he gained weight in the offseason intentionally, mostly muscle, which is good. He reported at 212 pounds. Now, again, he did do that once before in 2019, and he was injured for half the season. So I'm not exactly be like, look, muscle, he's going to be amazing or everything like that. But again, with the added power that he showed last year, with the added muscle, if he stays healthy on a team like the Twins, it's going to provide a lot of counting stats if he gets back to stealing bases. I think it could be a monster season. And I feel like, Joe, in the beginning of this, sort of when we started this podcast, you were, I could be wrong, we've done so many shows and a bunch of guests on it. I felt like you were a little more in on Buxton. You were drafting him a little more than I was, right. And I started taking a look at it. And just when you get to that range, especially in drafts, the guys with that potential just
there's
aren't
30-30 potential there.
Yeah.
And the ROI to find out is not absurd.
Right.
It's been higher in the past. It's not that high anymore to find out. And why not just see when you're looking at some of the other guys that are out there? I mean, especially in roto formats. In roto formats, once again, I look at it in season long is no matter how many games he misses, unless he misses the entire season, he's probably still going to steal you 25 bases, even if things don't go well. So that's the baseline. So after that, it's all gravy. And
it's health, man. It really is health. If he stays healthy, and that's a huge if with a guy like Byron Buxton, but everybody is injury prone until they're not injury prone anymore. Even a guy like Giancarlo Stanton, right, who gets injured what seems like every year, put together back-to-back seasons where he basically played every single game. So it can happen. A guy like Buxton, probably, maybe they should say, look, don't run into walls in the outfield, like chill out a little bit, take it easy, keep yourself healthy. But if he does, I find it hard to believe that he's not going to be a monster. So I'm in top 6 outfielder, bold prediction.
I like it. I'm all in with you. All right, here's another bold one for you. One of my least favorite guys here. Adelberto Mondesi loses his starting shortstop job to Bobby Witt Jr. at some point in time in the 2021 season.
Wow.
That's right. That's bold. This is bold. This is only 4. Imagine when we get to 1 what that's going to be. But yeah, this is 4. Yeah, and you know what? Here's the thing. Let's take his the first month of the season last year, and let's just extend that out by another 3 weeks. And you're telling me that that change doesn't happen? Because I'm telling you it does. I get it. It was great towards the very end, but Mondesi's had long stretches in other seasons where he has not hit at all. And I just don't think that's going to fly anymore. And you got Bobby Witt Jr. there, who I think is going to be a stud. I keep comping him in terms of talent, like offensively. I think he reminds me a lot of David Wright. Same kind of inside-out swing, hits the ball the opposite field very well. Look, I saw him play as a high schooler, and I thought he was the best player in that draft. And Bobby Witt Jr. already is knocking at the door. And these kids are coming up at 20 and 21 years old now. So I don't think there's anything that's going to stop him. And if anything, Mondesi could bottom out again, and I don't think there's enough people talking about that. Yeah, sure, he could be fantastic, but it's so funny to me that everybody always wants to look at the good and everyone wants to look at the bad because we've seen so stark of a comp of good and bad in this one player that it's just not my kind of guy. He's like the anti-Jose Abreu, where he just can't do anything right for a long period of time in any fashion, and I hate those guys. Those guys do not end up on my teams. It's just not my thing. So there you go. Bold.
That's bold. Mondesi is so much of a much better fantasy player than he is a real life player, of course, because he wins you the category. And in real life, I mean, you mentioned it. In August last year, he slashed 179, 212, 221. Like that shouldn't happen for a major league player. That's really bad. Now, of course, he followed it up over the last month with 356, 408, 667, and I think that probably that's part of what's going to buy him a little bit of a longer leash, in that they saw him be absolutely the worst player in baseball for, a 4 or 5 week stretch, and then he followed that up with being one of the best players in baseball. So I feel like it's going to take a ton to take him out of that lineup. It's going to take like a first half slump, which, by the way, if anybody can do it, Mondesi can do it because he doesn't walk and he swings at everything. So,
and if you're the Royals, that's a chip that could help somebody. Mondesi might be an attractive player. You got Witt coming through the system. Maybe you flip him in July.
And it might be something, though, where I think that they might, I guess it depends on how competitive they are as well, right? Because I kind of think they might be not really in the mix to win the division.
They're going to be sellers. And Mondesi's a good sell piece. Whit Merrifield is locked up for a long time still, another couple years there. They just signed Santana, but I mean, he's a movable piece too. But we're having fun here. It's bold. I mean,
I get it. I'm not holding your feet to the fire.
Not you. Yeah. No, I'll hold my own feet to the fire because I like a good fire. I like the smell of the fireplace. I don't care if it's dirty and I gotta clean it afterwards. I don't care. I'm a fireplace dude. Are you a fireplace guy or no?
No, I would be concerned that I would burn my entire house down if I had a fireplace. So no, not for me.
I miss the fireplace in the old house I used to have. It's sad. But anyway, I digress. Let's move on to number 3, your bold predictions.
Yeah, am I reverse jinxing myself, trying to reverse jinx myself with this? Jinx. I am. Randy Arozarena finishes outside the top 40 outfielders in fantasy. He is 15th in ADP. He is 15th in ECR. Now, I'm fading him compared to that, but I still have him 23rd. So to say outside the top 40, I mean, you got to be pretty bad. But for me, a really good 23-game stretch in the regular season and an insane 20-game stretch in the playoffs does not a superstar make. His strikeout rate was 28.9% last year. That's not like the worst thing you're ever going to see in the world.
No.
But in the spring so far, he had 10 strikeouts to just 1 walk. He hit the absolute crap out of the ball last year. If he does that again, then if he's going to keep his strikeout rate where it was, then he's going to probably be fine because he's got enough speed to make a difference. But the Rays are not going to be married to him. That's just not what the Rays do. They have a million guys that they can just platoon up there and do it. If he goes back to kind of the middling prospect that he was, and he kind of, he can't, keep his game on straight, then I think that there's a good chance that he loses playing time. Again, I draft Arozarena. I have him as basically a low-end outfielder too, because I think the upside is there and there isn't speed this year. But I do see the path to this entire thing bottoming out for him. So Arozarena finishes outside the top 40 outfielders is my bold prediction.
I'll see your 40 and I'll raise you 10 more. My bold prediction number 3, Randy Arozarena finishes outside the top 50. I got 2 words for you. Oscar Mercado. Remember him?
Yep.
Remember last year?
Yep.
Oh, Oscar Mercado looks like a 15 home run, 25 steal guy. Oh, look at Oscar Mercado, all this stuff. Everybody overrated Oscar Mercado because the possible illusion of power and speed. And guess what? Where is he now? DFA'd. That's right. He's done. So you have to go back and look at the minor league track record. And Arozarena is okay. I also think some of the off the field stuff that kind of got pushed by the wayside, there's a little bit of smoke there for me. Yeah. So you know what? I'm hard pass. And I think I looked at the 50, I saw your 40, and I wanted to raise you because I feel like there's some other guys in there that really could push this even further that play well. I mean, if you get a good, healthy season out of Mitch Haniger, that's a guy that could push.
Sure.
If you get, a Jared Kelenic coming up and being really good right away, that could push. So there's enough guys in the outfield that could push that ranking to the 50. So, yeah, everybody knows I'm anti-Arozarena, and I don't want him to be bad. That's not what I want. I wish no ill on anyone. But I'm not where everybody else is. And I just think there's not enough taking into account of the trendiness of a certain player. And this is this year's version of Oscar Mercado. And everybody last year, go look at all the podcasts and all the write-ups. Everybody's talking about that guy. Oh, he's really good value. And guess what? He's going about the same range that Arozarena is right now. So
now,
that's
there are some smart people, Joe, and this is what I try to reconcile. And you know what I think back to, my friend, is I think back to your podcast with Mason and Sporer when you were recapping your labor draft, and you talked about how Rudy Gamble, who's a very, very smart guy, who is like your drafting doppelganger, right? You guys are always in on the same guys, that he drafted Arozarena. And I remember you guys specifically talked about that and how you were surprised a little bit because you guys were all kind of fading him somewhat. But some of the projection systems, I mean, they really do like him. They buy into what he was doing.
Yeah. So. Look, and I'd love to. I should text Rudy and find out because I wanted to ask him. Did you feel like a pressure pick there? Is that what that was, or did you really believe? And sometimes that happens where you get to a point in the draft where it makes sense. And I want to say in that one, he lasted a little bit longer than normal. He did. So I think that's where Rudy probably saw the value of, you know what? If I'm wrong here, it's okay. If I was wrong 2 rounds ago, that's a problem. And that's what a good drafter does.
There are people who, this is what I'm saying. There are a lot of people in the industry who like him, which actually makes me feel better about, quote unquote, being bold, both of us, in really, really not liking him. And again, I'm 23rd, and a lot of that is the speed. There just is not speed right now, right? Like if he stays in the lineup, he's probably going to get you 15 to 20 steals this year. That's very valuable. Like that's just what it is. So he's a guy who I'm never getting because I have him ranked way lower than most people do. But it's still somebody, I'm not saying you have to entirely avoid him if he fell into your lap completely, but realistically, there is a plausible scenario here where I see him just being completely unusable in fantasy by midseason.
Okay, so that brings us to your number 2 bold prediction from Dan Harris.
Josh Rojas finishes as a top 10 second baseman. Now, I think 40% of people listening to this are like, who is Josh Rojas and why is he a top 10 second baseman? And actually don't know who he is, which is totally fine, by the way. But he is your starting second baseman for the Arizona Diamondbacks. He was a pretty big part of the Zach Greinke deal when they came over from the Astros. So what do we like about Josh Rojas? Well, number 1, we like that he steals all of the bases. 38 steals in the minors in 2018, 37 steals in between the minors and the majors in 2019. 1 steal last year in the majors. I'm not going to count that against him because it was a weird little thing. His sprint speed isn't that great, but he knows how to swipe a base. Meanwhile, in 2019 in the minors, he slashed 332, 418, 606 with excellent plate discipline, only 14.6% strikeout rate. He walks 12% of the time. And in 105 games that year, he compiled 23 home runs and 33 steals. He absolutely destroyed it in spring training. He basically forced the Diamondbacks' hand. They did not want to make him the everyday second baseman, but he hit .353. He had a .603 slugging percentage, 4 homers, 14 RBI. This could be a huge season, and I feel like nobody is even remotely talking about him at all, right? I mean, I'm telling you that I have a very strong feeling that whether it's the majority or close to the majority of people listening to this do not know who Josh Rojas is. Would not have known what position or team he played for.
Let me tell you something. You know how no matter how many things you know and what you do, there's always like a guy that like somehow becomes your blind spot?
Yep.
Josh Rojas was my blind spot up until about 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
Where I was like, who is this guy? Why do I not know enough about this guy? And we're like 500 players deep here at least.
Right.
To cover. And that's not an exaggeration. I mean, like that is an accurate assessment. And everybody's going to have that crack where it's just like, you know, like, oh, wait, who? You know, like you just don't know. Or who is the other setup guy on that? You know, because just sometimes guys just slip by you.
Sure.
And Rojas is this one, and I think it's great that you're highlighting him because those are numbers that should make everybody stand up and pay attention. And just from the stolen base potential alone in roto leagues, it's something to pay attention to also.
Two guys that I think fantasy managers, I'm going to assume it is, what day is it today, Joe? Tuesday? I'm going to assume.
I have no idea.
We don't know. I do have one draft left actually tomorrow night, but I'm going to assume that the vast majority of people listening to this have drafted their teams already.
Yes.
If they are available on the waiver wire, second base stinks. We know that, right? It's just not the position where you can get great production. Two guys who should either be on your watch list or put them on your bench now to see what happens. Ty France and Josh Rojas. Put them both.
France we have talked about.
We have talked about France all the time, but he's available in a ton of leagues. So still, he's not getting the love that he should because France and again Ross they are the guys who basically like maybe it doesn't work out. Like maybe their springs are mirages and kind of these blips that we've seen from them in the past don't come to fruition. But get them on your roster now because if they explode in the first couple of weeks of the season, then you're going to have to spend a lot of fab on them or burn your number one waiver pick. Get them now, put them on your bench, see where things go.
I agree. All right, my number 2 is an oldie but a goodie. That's right. I'm going to die on this hill. Carlos Correa plays 150 games and hits 30 home runs for the first time in his career. And you might say, well, that's not bold. Yes, it is. Go look at the Carlos Correa track record here. It's been infuriating, and I get it, but he's still a very young player, and he's playing for a contract year, and I think he's in a great situation where that lineup is still pretty good around him. He's still got Alvarez and Altuve and Bregman and a few other players too, like Michael Brantley. So, you know, for me, with Carlos Correa, I look at him as just one more opportunity to get a player with all kinds of potential super late in the draft and or even acquire him via trade. And I understand it's infuriating. And wouldn't you know it, wouldn't it make sense, all the sense in the world, for the one glowing year for Carlos Correa to be the year where he walks away and cashes in, and everybody sits back next year and then overrates him off that 1 year. So now he's not being overrated. Go take an investment or two in him. If he plays 150 games, it's not crazy to think he's going to hit 30 bombs. When he's healthy and playing, it's always his kind of pace. You gotta forget, he was a number 1 overall selection in the draft. I mean, this is a franchise caliber talent. He just hasn't gotten to that place yet. And he's still south of 30 by a few years, okay? He's 27 now, I think, or something. This is usually where you hit your prime anyway. So I'm going to go a little bold here with Carlos Correa, which is probably setting myself up for failure, but so be it.
Well, I think Correa does get unfairly dinged for a couple of things. I mean, he does have trouble staying healthy generally, although he was last year in the shortened season. There are two real things that come to mind. The first is that when he first came on the scene, I think everybody sort of thought he'd be like a 30 or 40 20 guy. He'd have those steals because he stole 13 bases in his first year. Guy had back issues, right? So when you have back issues, you really just don't want to push it on the bases, so he really doesn't have anything there. But in terms of the power, in terms of the quote-unquote career year, I think he definitely could have it this year. People, again, are dinging him last year. They're like, look, he stayed healthy last year, and he played however many games it was, 58, but he only hit 5 homers. Why do I want that? In the postseason, in 13 games, he hit 6 homers, right? And he batted .363 with a
so good, Dan. He's such a talent.
He's one of these guys, Joe, where I feel like he is getting no respect. I saw him traded for, Brad Hand the other day, which is, look, if you're in a league without a middle or, fine, whatever, but he doesn't get the respect that he does. But he's a great pick because when healthy, he'll produce decent numbers at the very least. He's got a pretty high floor with the potential to have a monstrous season. So I hope he stays healthy. I hope this one comes to fruition because I like Correa. I'd like to see what he can do in a 160-game season.
All right, so we still got some fantasy awards to give out, but Before we get to our number one, I want to take a quick shout out in a moment to thank the sponsor of today's show, which is Prize Picks. Because have you ever been there? You spend hours researching your DFS lineup only to have a late scratch ruin all your hard work. Your account balance dwindles into nothing as you watch the Sharks win all the money. Well, if this describes your DFS experience, then we've got the thing for you, and that is Prize Picks. It's a daily fantasy site that puts you against the numbers. So on Prize Picks, you simply pick 2 to 5 players and predict if they will go over or under their fantasy point total for that day in single stat projections. No sharks, no late scratches, just sit back and multiply your money. I like the sound of that. Think your favorite player is going to hit a home run tonight? Take us over and win some real cash today. Prize Picks gives you the chance to win 10 times your money for getting just 4 predictions correct. You sign up today at prizepicks.com or on the Prize Picks app. You can use the promo code PROS to get a 100% match of your first deposit of up to $100. That's prizepicks.com or Prize Picks, the app, and redeem your 100% match for your first deposit up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy simplified. And we like simple things here. So that being said, Dan, let's simply get to your most bold prediction of the 2021 Major League Baseball season. What is it?
That is Zach Plesac is rostered in fewer than 25% of fantasy leagues by May 1st. So we're not waiting very long. May 1st. He is 24th starting pitcher in ADP. He is 30th in ECR. I have him 40th, but he really might as well be 90th because when I ranked him 40th, it was basically like if push comes to shove and he was available there, I'd probably take him. I'd probably take him, but it's something where I know he will never be available there, so I feel comfortable with it. His projections for next year. I'm looking at our Zeal consensus projections, right, which aggregate projection systems from all over. 162 innings, 150 strikeouts, 10 wins, a 4.33 ERA, and a 124 whip. You can take that where you need to take that, or you can wait like 100 picks and take Marco Gonzalez, who's going to be projected for 174 innings, 143 strikeouts, 11 wins, a 4.27 ERA, and a 127 whip. Or you can wait an extra 50 or 60 picks and take Sean Manaea, who's got 142 innings and 122 strikeouts with 9 wins, a 4.07 ERA, and a 123 whip. We are basing this, Joe, off an 8-game stretch. That's it. An 8-game stretch where he allowed a 224 BABIP and a 91.7% strand rate. It is ludicrous to me. And the Indians are magic, right? Magic. They take these command guys and they figure out how to harness it. And you kind of and Alex Fast kind of talked me in a little bit to Savale, a little bit where he's going.
Oh, we've been saying, and we said it separately. So like I've said it separately on here, and then Fast came in and said the same thing I did unprompted, which is, there's a good chance Savale ends up the second best guy in this rotation. Sure. When all said and done, and I agree with him. Yeah,
and look, Plesac is allowing a ton of homers this spring.
His
again,
ERA's over 7 this spring.
Terrible. And again, I don't want to overrate spring, but if I'm looking for some reason, it's almost confirmation bias at this point where I'm like, there's no way, and I'm like, okay, good, he's getting bombed, and spring gives me another reason to get away. I do not have a do not draft list, Joe. Right? No fantasy manager should have a do not draft list because at some point there is a value on every player, including Plesac. Instead, Plesac is more on my, I cannot imagine that he could ever fall to the point where I would consider drafting him list. Like, that's what it is. Like, if we're in a very deep league and he lasts, 100 picks beyond his ADP, fine. But other than that, I do not see the path to him being an SP2, an SP3. I don't see it. I'm all the way off. I think he's going to get off to a poor start. I could be right. Bold prediction, but I think he's going to get off to a terrible start. And fantasy managers are going to wise up very quickly and be done.
I love it. Actually, when I first started playing fantasy baseball way back in the 90s, I remember I used to have a list. I had a little notebook, I had my player points and things like that, so I'd reference it off there because, you had to write stuff down and things like that. It's a different age,
Right.
And I used to have this list in that notebook called the Larry Walker list, which is players that I refuse to own at certain, basically it's like, look, these are the guys I'm staying away from this year. I used to call it the Larry Walker list because every year Larry Walker would get hurt and he would ruin his value and it was terrible. And I love Larry Walker. He's a Hall of Famer, but it's just the truth. The investment, you could call it the Troy Tulowitzki. At one point, I think it became the Troy Tulowitzki list. Fine. It might have actually, transferred name and title at some point to Troy Tulowitzki. But there are players that I don't want at certain values, and Plesac's one of them. And I love this, that he could get dropped. I mean, that would be...
Oh, yeah.
hilarious.
This is bold, Joe. This is
Yeah.
bold, but I think if you took the dive, I find it hard to believe that the casual fantasy manager is looking at a guy named Zach Plesac, who they didn't know before last year. Like they were like, Zach Plesac, what? Yeah, the guy who kind of whatever, like barely strikes anybody out, and that there's a really tiny sample, and they get talked into drafting him, and if he's terrible early on, that's the type of guy that fantasy managers are not going to feel wedded to. They're not going to feel the need. If Clayton Kershaw gets off to a really bad start, you're going to be like, I'm going to ride this out. All right, let me see where this goes. But if Zach
you're right.
Plesac gets off to a terrible start,
does not have the cachet. You're absolutely 100% right. I love the passion about the Plesac. I love negative passion. It's my favorite thing. It's so great. You got like old school Dennis Leary anger about Zach Plesac. Which
I don't
is
know
like,
why.
I think you hear me knocking, and I think I'm coming in, and I'm bringing Tristan McKenzie and Aaron Savali with me. All right, let's do my number one here, and going bold here. So this guy came out with a blister yesterday, so who knows? But I don't care. It's going to make it even more bold. And I kind of need this because, as you all know, in Tout Wars, I opened up a Shohei Ohtani Spite store where I own Shohei Ohtani, the pitcher, and the utility hitter. All the Ohtani, I made him one person again. They wanted to separate him. It was kind of like the Infinity Stones. They separated him all different places, made it really hard to find them and draft him. So I said, no. Joe Pisapia has the gauntlet, and I put them all together, all the Ohtani pieces. And the bold prediction is this. Shohei Ohtani strikes out 100 batters and drives in 100 runs in 2021. How you doing? You like that? Is that bold?
Yeah.
I guess pitching 100 innings would be even more bold, but I think he could get 100 strikeouts without even pitching the 100 innings, I think.
Yeah. I like it. By the way, I don't think everybody fully knows the Towers story. I don't want to bore everybody, but
I don't think it's I think it's if you watch Justin Mason's live stream, you know it, because Justin Mason apparently was laughing his tail off about it as it was all going on.
So Joe basically nominated Shohei Ohtani, who I believe was one player on the draft software, because the draft software is separate from the actual league where he is two separate players, the hitter and the batter. And there was bidding, and Joe, I believe you started at $5.
$5.
Somebody bid $6, and they got him, and then everything stopped, and they asked hitter or pitcher, and it was
said, wait, I was supposed to declare before. I forgot the rule. Let me go back and do it again. Because then they asked me, what is he? And I said, well, let's say hitter, right? I think
pitcher, you said.
I said pitcher. And I said, okay, well, let me do it again. Well, no, but it's $5. But I'm like, yeah, but it's not really fair.
They asked the guy who won the bidding whether he wanted him for $6, and he said no. And they said, okay, now he's yours for $5. And you said, whoa, hold on. Like, I was just nominating him. And this went on for like a good half hour or something like that, the dispute over what Shohei Ohtani. So instead, Joe was stuck with Shohei Ohtani, the pitcher, which I think was probably the lesser of the Ohtanis that you wanted. And so he texted me later.
Ohtani evils? Is that the
Yes, exactly. And I had to jump off the draft towards the end of because I had a very busy draft weekend. And Joe texted me like a half hour later and said, don't worry, we also got Ohtani the hitter, because I opened up an Ohtani Spite store. So that's what we call it, the Ohtani Spite store. We have both versions of Ohtani now.
And the one little caveat that you missed in this was, I knew this was going to create a problem later on, because in a draft, you can't, if this guy's locking up let's say I need another pitcher, we're not going to let me nominate him if it thinks my pitching is full. And I can't do that, or my utility spot or whatever. So it did indeed cause problems, as I said it would.
Yep.
And I said, this is the point I was making earlier, to which I then said, according to Scott Bogman, our third wheel in that glorious the glorious tricycle of drafting that we had, he said, you just said the most Italian thing I've ever heard anybody say in my whole life, which was, that's why I said what I said when I said it. And Bogman lost his mind. He thought that was hysterical. So yeah.
Well, anyway, it's for your bold prediction. Obviously, we do have the blister from yesterday, so that is whatever. But yeah, Ohtani is a guy who, and I remember we talked about it on the Fantasy Fest with Nick Pollock, and he was talking about Ohtani and where he had Ohtani, and I was like, that's like 50 spots higher than I have him. But gradually, as the spring went on, I had to move him up, and I had to move him up pretty high, and I haven't dropped him yet despite the blister, because he looks great. Joe Madden basically wants to use him as, I think we would use him as fantasy managers, which is to give him as much playing time as possible. So it is a bold prediction, but I like it very much.
Do you think it would be fun to make him a closer instead?
Fun? I mean, for who?
Well, but for everyone. And here's my thinking. And I'm just throwing this out there. At a certain point, is the utility guy. Like, Ohtani's not helping you defensively, right? You have a 3-run lead. You take him out of said whatever. Now, obviously, this would be complicated if he was coming up in the 8th inning or
sure,
depending on the top of the 9th. You have to get him warmed up, in other words, to go out there and do that. But
yeah,
there's something kind of interesting about, like, well, if he was the closer, he could just go out there. Well, okay, you're not up this inning. You go warm up, and then you come in for the 9th and you shut it down, and that's it. And then, I don't know. I've been thinking about that. I know it's a little complicated depending on where the order lies in a certain night.
No, that's a really good idea. He could DH every day.
Because defensively, it doesn't, you don't like him playing the field anyway. He's a DH already.
And when you bring him in to pitch or whatever, and if you lose the DH or however it would work, it wouldn't really matter because it would be the 9th inning unless you went to extra. So, yeah.
And extras is limited anyway, because you're only going to, you get the guy on second base to start the,
right.
So it's all that kind of stuff anyway. Yeah. All right, so those are our bold predictions. Mine are Corbin Burnes finishing top 10 SP, Mondesi losing his job to Bobby Witt Jr., so I could get Whit Merrifield and Bobby Witt all out there at the same time. Randy Arozarena, I say top 50. Dan says top 40 outfield, so I'm even worse than Dan. Carlos Correa playing 150 games and hitting 30 bombs, and Ohtani striking out 100 and driving in 100. Dan's bold predictions were Blake Snell, number 1 fantasy pitcher, Byron Buxton, top 6 fantasy outfielder, Josh Rojas, and now you've all been educated, so now you know. Correct. Top 10 second baseman, Arozarena top 40 outfielders, and Zach Plesac rostered in less than 25% of leagues by May 1st. I love that you gave a date.
Oh yeah, because by the end of the season, forget about it. That might be my actual prediction. Then by May 1st, you got to get bold.
All right, so let's give out some awards, some award predictions. And again, this is fun, everybody. So I want you to go to the cabinet, and I want you to go get the salt. I want you to take one single grain. And I want you to hold it in your hand and listen to the rest of the podcast, or go back and listen to it again in case you're getting a little hurt with some of your feelings in some of these players. So, Dan, let's start at the top with MVP. Who is the MVP of fantasy? Who is the 1-1 going into next year?
Oh, is that what MVP means?
I don't know. Who's your MVP in fantasy? It's whatever your interpretation is.
Yeah, all right. So the way I looked at MVP was sort of a guy who is going to greatly outperform sort of where you had to draft him, right? Okay. Like somebody who's greatly outperform expectations. And for me, this might be chalky if you think about it that way, but I am going to go with Vladdy because I do think that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. has the potential to outperform everything that he sort of, has done to this point. He looks great. He lost 10,000 pounds. Just got to elevate the ball a little bit. He's going to be playing in great parks with a great surrounding cast. So I think this could be here. If it was who's going to go 1-1, it's going to be Trout. He's going to get back because he's going to steal 25 bases this year. Go back to number 1.
That's a bold prediction.
Could have gone there. That's true.
I think that is actually almost top 2 bold for you. If the circumstances ROI, how about Jordan Alvarez? I mean, Jordan Alvarez getting picked in ADP is like 80 overall? Yeah. 78, 79, somewhere in that range. Dude, that guy could hit 45, 50 home runs. And
do you have as many shares of Alvarez as you should based on how much you like him this year?
I can't, because what happens is I end up taking Cruz because that's the first guy I have.
He, by the way, was another one of my potential. Every year he could be the fantasy MVP because every year he just crushes his draft position.
I have a ton of Cruz. I think the only place I have Alvarez and Cruz, I think, in our ESPN Fantasy Pros League.
Yes, sure.
Which we're playing in. So I think I have both of them. But my 1-1, and I'm coining a new phrase, this might be his new nickname, is Juan. So Juan Soto. So he is 1-1, hashtag 1-1. That's where we're going there. All right, so your fantasy Cy Young, you're going to stick with Blake Snell, or are you going to pick somebody else?
No, I'll go with somebody else because that's just a bold prediction. Of course, the obvious answer would have been Marcus Stroman, but realistically, I don't think he could do it. I'm going to go with a guy who I feel like could be sneaky with the innings, and I think you need a ton of innings this year. Probably his last year before he retires. Looked great this spring. I'm all in on Charlie Morton. Yay. I think he could have a monstrous season this year because, again, one of the things I kind of like this year is veterans. Is if you're going to retire the next year, then you're like way up on my board because I'm like, good, there's no reason to baby you whatsoever. Mm-hmm. Morton, I think, is going to be one of these guys, these veteran pitchers who is going to be able to throw a bunch of innings if he stays healthy. And again, I'm writing off last year before the playoffs because of the shoulder. I think he could have a monstrous year in Atlanta. So Morton, my Cy Young.
I think the Cy Young for fantasy is actually going to be Yu Darvish this year. I think people they haven't really appreciated how good he's been. He's pitched on some bad Cubs teams for the last year and change, and I think that when you start peeling and how good he was 2 years ago in that second half, I think it was something like 114 strikeouts to seven walks at one point. It was the most ludicrous line I'd seen since like the Kirk Schilling days of K to walk, where you're just like, this is impossible. How can this even be? Roy Halladay used to do stuff like that too. And that is where he's at right now. And now he's pitching in San Diego, better offense, really good defensive team too. Let me tell you, man, Yu Darvish, I think is going to really, I loved the second round grade on Yu Darvish. Whenever I could get him, I wanted him on any team I could. Rookie of the year. Do you have a fantasy rookie of the year this year?
I'm going to go with Vaughn, Andrew Vaughn, a guy who we like. And
I wasn't sure if it was Ricky Vaughn. Sure
Ricky Vaughn
or Greg Vaughn. One of them.
Very quick. What is the appropriate age for me to let my baseball obsessed son watch Major League, a movie with a lot of material?
Well, look, I definitely had seen Major League by the time I was like 9 years old or so.
Yeah, so had I.
So I'm going to say 9 years old. My kids have seen some movies with some language in it.
That's what I'm saying.
Look, it's got some language in it. It's a fun movie. You watch the movie, just don't say the words. And they're fine with it.
Maybe I can find that. Maybe I can find it. I'll find it being on TBS or something, and I'll record it so that it bleeps out all the strike this guy out when they do that, right? We can do that. Anyway, Andrew Vaughn is my actual pick. Again, you could go with Kelenic, who will probably be up soon. I really think that Kirilloff is going to I think he's going to be up pretty soon. I think he's going to hit. But a guy like Vaughn now, especially with the Eloy injury, I mean, he's getting some time in the outfield. He apparently looks passable, which is surprising. So he's a guy, rookie of the year. I'm going to go with him.
I'm going with Ian Anderson. I'm going with my boy, staying on brand. I think Gavin Lux could get into this conversation too. I really do. But I'm going to go with Ian Anderson, who almost made my bold predictions. I was saying, man, this is a guy who could also finish top 10. It was him and Burnes. I was going back and forth, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to go with Burnes because it's more controversial and more fun. So, those are the MVPs, the Cy Young's Rookie of the Year. How about biggest bust? Do I even have to ask her?
Well, look, I mean, I gave you Arozarena and I gave you Plesac, but I'll give another name right now, and he's a guy who's going a little earlier, so that will make him an even bigger bust. It's Cody Bellinger. I mean, you've got the shoulder surgery in the offseason, so you can see him getting off to a slow start. He is obviously in the spring. He's batting 136. And again, I've never quite been able to reconcile I'm going to come off an MVP season, and the first thing I'm going to do is change my stance, and then I'm going to bat 239. And now I'm coming off shoulder surgery. I just think he's a guy, Joe, when I first did my first cut of rankings, I think he was probably at the back end of the first round, and then I was like, well, I've got to move him behind Freeman right now. Then I moved him behind Harper, and I started moving him behind all the pitchers. I have 0 shares of Cody Bellinger, and I'm really glad about that because I just kind of, every time I look at him and I think about what he could be this year, I get really nervous.
That's a good one. Look, I've already talked about Mondesi and Arozarena, so I try to give you another one here. How about Jack Flaherty? I'm going to give you a bust in Jack Flaherty. And here's my thing with Jack Flaherty. I like Jack Flaherty, but his home road splits are trash. He's had bad splits in first half, second half. And the problem I have with Jack Flaherty is he's being drafted as an ace.
Yep.
And there seems to be nobody worried about these splits. And I'm worried about him because, especially, I play in a lot of head-to-head points leagues. I want a guy who's going to go out there every week and be good. I'd rather have Lance Lynn than him. Throwing names out there. Kershaw's going around the same ADP. Woodruff is another guy I think I would rather have than Jack Flaherty. And I know that might surprise people, but even Blake Snell is another one. I don't like inconsistency when it comes to early picks. I like guys, that you look at the stats. They hit on the road, they hit away. They pitch on the road, they pitch away. They lefties, righties, it doesn't matter. Like, they're just good at what they do. And Flaherty might grow into that, but it's still a might. He hasn't done it yet. And I think that's a problem. All right, let's wrap things up here with comeback player, feel-good stories of fantasy. Do you have a comeback player for this year in fantasy you're looking for?
I'll go with JD Martinez, who I think we all kind of like, right? We like as a guy who basically, if you are willing to buy the fact that last year was largely because he was just kind of like, I mean, he kind of admitted, he was like, I didn't really take it seriously.
He's like, bro, I just played Halo and ate chips.
Very bizarre. Very bizarre to hear. Plus,
that's what I did at quarantine.
Well,
actually, to be honest, I played Animal Crossing. I'm not going to lie.
All right. Well, that explains your poor performance last year. But anyway, he has been a video guy. And again, we've heard the video thing from a bunch of players right now. But JD Martinez was a guy that I knew about the video in between innings way before last year. So that it is not sort of a rewriting history, let me make up an excuse. It is something where I knew about his whole thing where checking video in between innings is a huge part of his regular deal. I think the fact that he's going to be able to do that this year, I think, again, we've talked about it before on this podcast show, there is a possibility that JD Martinez is done. Like, it's possible that the
he could be on the
gone,
cliff. There's no doubt about the cliff.
But you, and a lot of really smart people in the industry are betting on the comeback. So he's going to be comeback player of the year for me.
It's worth the wager. If it fails, it fails, and that's okay. You know, I always like to identify the things that I'm okay to be wrong about and right about on other people's teams and my team, and the justification of all of that. I got one for you. It's a pitcher. It's Frankie Montas, my boy Frankie. Let's get back, Frankie. Let's get back to being the dominant guy. In the Black Book, I did a whole lot of work on Frankie Montas going into last year, and I had all the shares. I loved Frankie Montas, a big fan of Frankie Montas. Had him the year before when he broke out, and then the PDs happened. I said, oh, no, don't get caught, stupid guy. Don't get caught doing them. I didn't say don't do them. I said don't get caught. That's right. Yeah, you roll your eyes. I miss PED baseball in the worst way. But anyway, then last year, obviously, it was just terrible with the back issue and all of that. Yeah. But so far, so good this spring. Good home ballpark. The A's are always going to be competitive. So, look, I like Frankie Montas as a bounce back. And there you go. So there you have it. Our bounce backs, our awards, our bold predictions, and so much more. And reminding everybody, if this just wasn't enough for you, this hour of Dan Harris and myself, well, guess what? We got more. Because leading off every single day, Joe Pisapia, Dan Harris, right here on Fantasy Pros. We're going to do a 25, give or take, minute show. It's going to be short, not super long. So you could, the drive to work or the walk, or, you're on the treadmill for a little while and you want to get ready for your baseball day. We're going to talk season long, DFS, break it all down for you, the news, the notes, and everything in between. If you want to watch it, and you should, because we're handsome, you go to YouTube and you subscribe to, we are. We go to the Fantasy Pros MLB channel, and look, maybe we're not classically handsome. We're handsome in our own way. That's what I think.
I'll take it. As my wife says, a sense of humor goes a long way.
There you go.
I'll take that.
She would certainly have to have one. But go to Fantasy Pros MLB on YouTube. Click subscribe. Click the notification button. Also subscribe to the Fantasy Pros podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Okay. And look, we're excited to start this season with you, and we want to be here for you every day. Breaking things down for you, interacting. You want to tweet at us questions, we'll answer them for you. We want this to be the people's show. That's what we're doing here. So get involved. Leading off is coming at you.
Friday, by the way, just make that clear.
Oh, yeah.
Well, day after, immediate. All right, we're not waiting until next week. First season starts Thursday. We will be back recapping it, getting you ready for Friday. Limited action on Friday, but still, we're going to be recapping it, getting you ready. Friday morning, leading off begins, and then every weekday going forward.
I love it. Love it. Start on a Friday. Work out the kinks. Not that there's going to be any kinks.
Be great.
It's going to be great. It's going to be terrific. You're going to love it. And also, only a few hours left to get involved in that Juan Soto jersey. So make sure you do that. Go to fantasypros.com/MLB contest and go put your review in. And thanks to our friends at pristineauction.com, you can get involved in that. Also, want to thank today's sponsor of the show, Prize Picks. Once again, you can go get the app, or you can go to prizepicks.com. Use the code PROS to get a 100% match on your first deposit up to $100. That's prizepicks.com or the Prize Picks app. Daily fantasy simplified. So that'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. For Dan Harris, I'm Joe Pisapia. We'll see you next time, kids.
Thanks for tuning in to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Don't forget to check out our featured videos. And while you're at it, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Fantasy Pros, so you can get the latest news and updates to give you the edge you need in your fantasy league.